All right.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. Today, I have a special guest, Rich Haggerty. He's coming on, and he's gone through some incredible feats, and he's going to share how he's overcome them. But then not only did he overcome them, but now he is empowering other people how to become the best version of themselves. Let me introduce you to Rich. Rich, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm great. How are you doing today?
Today I am exceptional, but I'm getting better every day.
Excellent.
Yes, sir. So we have a lot to talk about. I definitely want to get to your story, but before we even get there, because it's an incredible story, talk to me about Little Rich. Where did you grow up? Who influenced you when you were a child, like say 5, 6, 7, and then we can go up in age?
I grew up in the Boston area,
Mhm.
and my primary influence was my dad, but I didn't know it at the time. Just later in life, I realized it was my dad, and a lot my grandmother. As I have gone through life, and especially through this process of what I went through, I reflected back on a lot of lessons I got from my dad and my grandmother primarily. But it was all my dad. It was all my dad.
Wow, nice, nice. When did you when did you come to that realization? Because you said it wasn't, right away.
When I had when I had I have two daughters. So when I had kids and I was raising my daughters, there was, kids can kind of be a pain sometimes, right? And so you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here, right? And my father had passed when, my one daughter was only one, so the other daughter never knew him. But whenever I walked into a mall, it was weird. Whenever I walked into a mall with my kids, I was talking to my dad, and my dad was talking to me.
Wow.
Or if it was something really, really tough, if there was something really, really tough going on, and when one of my daughters was going through a really tough time as a teenager, I just kept talking to my dad. And he wasn't around, like physically wasn't around. I just kept talking to dad, and I just kept hearing, hang with it, Rich. It's going to get better. Hang with it. You got this. And that's like those words just carried. And my father died when I was like 25, and he was like a maintenance guy in City Hall. And I had already been gone in the military, so I came back for the funeral. And at the funeral, like there were state senators there, doctors, lawyers. There was like so many people. It was kind of overwhelming, the amount of people that showed up for the wake and the funeral. And that's when I realized your job title, your expertise, your amount of money, none of it trumps just being a good human. And that was my dad. And then I started realizing all these lessons I learned from him as I got older.
What happened along? You said he died at 25.
I was 25. Yeah.
You were 25. Yeah. How old, or what lessons during that time? Because you reflect back now and you go, oh, I get it. I get it. Do you remember any lessons in particular
A lot.
that really,
There's one there's one that, and I talk about this on one of my podcasts.
Naveen Jain says, Rich.
Yeah. And so we were driving down the highway with my dad in a pickup truck, and I saw this guy hitchhiking. And I was in the passenger seat. My brother was in the middle seat. My dad's just driving. And then I did this, like I was making fun of the guy that was hitchhiking, right? As we went by, and my dad looked over and he saw me do it. He pulled the truck over, and he didn't scream at me, but he was pretty stern. He's like, you don't ever make fun of anybody because of their situation. You never put a guy down because they're having a hard time. You never, never, never do that. Don't ever do that ever again. And I was like, okay. And really the lesson was everybody's valuable.
Yeah, that's a huge lesson.
Everybody's valuable.
Right. I love the fact that your dad said that to you, because we don't know what somebody may be going through, especially nowadays, right? It could be mental situation, it could be stress, it could be, you never know who died that day or the day before or the month before, what they're going through. So for us to judge another person, I totally agree with you, Dad. Words of wisdom right there.
Yep. And through my journey after my accident, I experienced people looking at me all the time. I was really messed up, and part of my neck was like kind of arched like a giraffe, and my upper body didn't really move. It was one movement. And I remember one time I was walking across the sidewalk when I lived in Ventura, but I was kind of walking like I was tweaking on drugs because my body didn't work properly, and I had to be careful of the fall. And this guy was crossing the street with his two kids on me, and he like grabbed his kids and he made a quick wide pass of me, like, don't go near that guy. Like, hey,
so before we go even into, I want to get to how your accident happened, right? How old were you? And Naveen is also here saying that you are an inspiration, my friend. And thank you, Naveen, for joining us. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Yeah. So let's get into the day before your accident, because I want to paint that picture, right? Your life, you were good, you know, and one thing is an accident is instantaneous, right? So let's talk about what were you doing the day before your accident? What do you recall? And then we'll go into the morning of your accident, and then we'll go to your accident. And then I have some images I'd like to share with some people too.
Sure. So the day before my accident, for me, it was a normal day. I ran every day at 5:30. I run 3 miles with my neighbor Pat. So I know I ran 3 miles that day. I probably lifted weights a little bit, but not a lot. And I just did some work, freelance consultant. So I just did a bunch of work. And I remember going to this bike shop and buying the top of the line helmet for mountain biking. The top of the line. I don't care what the cost is, because I had a regular road bike helmet. I bought the top of the line 30 minutes before they closed. I remember, and had dinner, went to bed, got a hold of my buddy that we were going to go up this really high mountain just to go for a day, just go up in the mountain and just explore the mountain up there. It's really what it was. It wasn't for racing or anything like that. Went to bed, woke up the next day, feeling good.
So what time do you recall what time you woke up?
I usually, I'm an early bird. I wake up 5:30. If it's 5:30, I'm like, okay, the day's kind of late, right? So I don't know what time I woke up. It was between 4:30 and 5. I guarantee you that, because I know we wanted to get an early start, because you don't want to be caught up on the mountain. There's mountain lions up there and stuff like that. I was like, hey, let's get up there early. Let's build in a lot of extra time. We had, camelbacks, water, two-way radios, emergency whistle. We had all that stuff. So I picked my buddy up, and we're probably at the trail, had something to eat. And then we're probably at the trailhead, maybe 6:30, 7 at the bottom.
Right. So I'm assuming this accident happened on the mountain.
Yes.
Now, I know nothing about it, and I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't want to know about it because I wanted you, in your own words, to paint it for me. So if you can, and I know when we replay something, there's trauma that we are doing, and it happens. But you already talked about how you are able, and we're going to talk about that too, how you're able now to not have that traumatic experience reliving it because you understand what happened, right? So would you mind taking us through what led up to the accident?
Sure. So like a few years ago, there's no way I'd be able to even talk about it.
Right.
But now,
Sure.
now it's okay. Right. So we were going up to this peak of this mountain, and there's like massive views of the ocean, the valleys, everything up there.
Yeah.
So we start going. We rode a little bit, but we ended up kind of pushing and carrying our bikes because there was real tall weeds. We thought we were on like a main trail, but it wasn't, right? And so for about 4.5 hours, we were carrying our bikes up this trail. And then we found a spot we could ride a little bit. And then what we did was we ditched our bikes, and then we went about a mile up to the peak. And then we could see all this fog coming in because it was on the coast in Ventura, California. So you could see all the fog coming in, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. I still have the videos. And there's a little sign-in book up there in an ammo box. So my buddy Dave, I was like, hey, just put my name in there. I don't care. So he signed. It was like, and then across the valley, we see this lightning strike a peak. There was a storm coming in. We're like, oh, crap. And it's all exposed rock up there. Like, we got to get out of here. So we ran down to where we weren't on the peak, about a mile. We're both pretty fit. Dave's extreme cardio guy. So we ran down about a mile to the bikes. We got to the bikes, and he's like, all right, let's go. And I was like, all right. I said, I'll just follow you. Now it's a fire road. It's like a dirt road. Okay. Had our helmets on. We're ready, you know? So Dave goes, he knows the way down the fire road. So it's not this crappy trail thing that we went up. And we're going down the fire road. I'm following him. And we're not racing or none of that stuff. So he goes, I'm just kind of rolling down the hill, down the fire road. And on my left, I saw some weeds, some overgrown weeds, like a lot of overgrown weeds, but my bike kind of tracked to the left. And I was like, okay, all right, my legs are just going to hit the weeds. And if there's thorns, whatever, but you know, I'm not going to stop. And I was probably going too fast to stop right away. Well, I probably would have crashed if I just stopped. So I just kind of, okay, just roll with it. It's good. So as I approached the weeds, that's when I realized as my tire went in this hole, I was going into a big hole in the ground that was about 3 feet deep, about 6 feet wide. I didn't even see it. I saw when my tire started going in. And instead of just hitting and going over the handlebars, what happened was that I was coming down at an angle. So when my tire went in, it hit the point and threw all the energy up in the air. And the last thing I remember seeing was my handlebar to my left hip. And I was a surfer. So I remember when you surf, you're like, stay away from the board. When you wipe out, get away from the board. So I remember thinking that. And then everything blacked out. At a certain point, it was all silent. It was all black. At a certain point, I realized I'm coming down on my head. I could feel my head pulling my body, and my feet were above me. And I've had this sensation before from surfing. You wipe out, you fall off the wave. So it's very common. So I was like, oh crap, you're coming down on your head. I did a chin tuck, and it felt like I was up there for 10 minutes. I did a chin tuck, and right when I did that chin tuck, I corkscrewed into the ground. So it was like tuck, boom, straight in. I don't even think I tumbled. So for the sake of time, Dave backtracked and found me. I couldn't stand. And my left side had massive burning going down it. Like it was an electrical charge going down my whole left side. So what happened was Dave came back. he didn't know what would happen because I wasn't covered in dirt like I wiped out. He just sees me on the ground, and I'm like, I'm cursing, I'm screaming. And so he stabilized me, rested my head on my camelback, and he's like, don't move. So he calls 911. He had to go a little bit away from me. He calls 911. I crashed at the only place with there's cell service on that entire mountain. That's the only place.
Wow.
So what the 911, and he had it on speakerphone. So I'm laying on the ground and I can hear him communicating with him. And they told him, turn on the compass on your iPhone. Because we're up on the Topa Mountains. And so when he turned on the compass, they had him read the coordinates to them.
Right.
This is the exact GPS location for this guy on that mountain. He said, okay, we're on the way. And he came back to me. And I remember when I heard you're on the way, it's like, I might live. I remember thinking, you might live through this.
Oh my gosh.
And so the fog was coming pretty high. And if there's fog, the helicopter can't get you.
Mm.
So the helicopter came, they landed on the mountain. They immediately just stabilized me, neck brace, threw me in the helicopter. Dave couldn't get in the helicopter. There was no room. Off I go. Now I'm in the trauma center. And the amazing thing about this guy, and I love him to death, as he's going down the mountain, he's texting the emergency paramedics in the helicopter because they didn't know where they were going to take me because of the fog. They didn't know if they could land in the trauma center and all that other stuff. So he coordinated between friends and family and these guys as he's coming down the mountain.
Mm.
He has 11 miles to go. He's got an hour and I'm gone. And so I learned after is I went and met the crew that saved me, and they said they had 10 minutes to get me because of the fog. 10 minutes. If they can't get me, it's a ground crew. And I've kind of mostly confirmed this with doctors. If it's your ground crew, it's a while to get up there. I suffocate out there and I'm dead, or a bumpy ride down. That's it. I'm toast.
Right.
And now I'm in a trauma center.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like, hey, we're up there smiling, cracking jokes. Look at this beautiful view. To, I think I might live through this.
Mm. Mm.
Just like that.
So how long, do you have any idea how long it took him from the mountains to the trauma center?
It was pretty quick. They flew over the mountains because the mountains are right along the edge of the city where I live. I would say from the time they picked me up, what they did was they landed in a neutral area. They couldn't land at the hospital, so they found a little bit further away this big open parking lot. They landed there, and then an ambulance picked me up and then took me to the trauma center.
Gotcha.
So from the time they picked me up to the time I got to the trauma center, there's a step in the middle that was kind of weird, but like it's insignificant now. I'd say 45 minutes.
Mm.
That's when they're like, yeah, you're really messed up.
Wow. Were you conscious the whole time?
At the time, I didn't think I got knocked out, but then as I went through replaying this and the trauma, I definitely know I got knocked out. And I had an undiagnosed brain injury. But when Dave found me, I was awake, but I'm certain I got knocked out temporarily. And so he found me. I was awake and screaming, and in the helicopter, I was awake through all of it at that point.
Gotcha. So they stabilized your neck. When they got you to the trauma center, what occurred next?
Okay, it was pretty extreme. It was kind of it's almost like you're walking through a subway station with a million people. There's so many people, so many tests that kept touching my toes. Can you feel my toes? Squeeze my fingers, because I had a spinal cord injury. They did the x-rays, and at a certain point, Dr. Michaela Lee, the lady that basically got me my life through surgery, she was to my right side, and she said, Rich, your neck is destroyed. You have a really bad broken neck, and one vertebrae is dislodged. So you have your column of your vertebrae. When my neck flexed out, one of those vertebrae pulled out and then it closed up. So I had one free hanging with my spinal cord in it,
Oof.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
She said, we're going to have to do something that's going to be really painful and you're going to have to be awake for this. So they put screws in the back of my head. They put counterweights. And then this guy put straps around my arms and he said, don't resist. And they basically pulled my neck apart to see if that one would go back in. They had to do it 3 or 4 times. And talk about pain. Talk about pain when they hyperextend your neck to get that column in. Because otherwise, one movement, it cuts that thing. Because I had all broken, my whole neck was broken everywhere. And so went through that.
Go ahead and show up an image, just one for now, of what they had to do to stabilize your neck, right?
Yep. That's 16 screws and 2 rods to hold my neck together. I have essentially almost no ligaments in my entire neck, nothing holding it together.
Wow. All right. That is just beyond crazy. I cannot imagine and you talked about you got to be awake for this whole thing. I can't imagine the amount of pain that you went through when this happened.
It was pretty bad. And then what they did was they stabilized me. At this point, it's probably 6, 7 o'clock at night. So they stabilized me and said, look, you're going to need major surgery tomorrow. Your body's been too much. We can't do it tonight. It's like, okay. So basically, they drugged me up. I was out. I don't remember it. And then I do remember them wheeling me into the trauma surgery area. And this is weird. I don't know, but as they wheeled me in, I'm on the bed, got the neck thing on all the tubes and all that stuff.
Right.
And as they're wheeling me in, I remember, just like in the movie, they open the 2 big doors. Before they opened the 2 big doors, I looked to the right in my brain and I saw myself standing there. And then as we went by, the doors opened. As we went by, I was still standing there, and the me on the bed was looking at the me standing up, and the me standing up was looking at me in the bed. So I definitely had a pretty powerful experience there.
I have to agree with Laura Meal. She says you are blessed. Definitely. Let me show another image of with the back of it, and you have 16 screws, right? 16
screws, and those are metal rods along the screws holding my neck in place. And when you talk to the doc, like any doctor that somehow encounters this story, or I have to go see, they're all like, how are you alive? I'm like, well, I don't know, I am. Okay, how are you not in a wheelchair on a ventilator as a quadriplegic? I'm like, I don't know, right? That's my best case. But then I explained what I'm doing, and they're kind of like, okay, you're pushing the limit. I'm like, I'm not pushing the limit. I'm living.
Yes, you are living. You are living. What a traumatic experience, not only mentally, but for your body to go through, right? And we were talking earlier, let's take another image here. This is once they actually had to fillet you to be able to put all those screws in it.
Yes. And the first surgery, they went through the front of my neck. So what they did in the surgery, they had to open up the front of my neck to do the super, super dangerous stuff. And then while on the table, they had to turn me over and not injure my spinal cord.
Right.
And then I was in there all day long. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Not an easy task for anybody, and including the surgeons. You got to give them so much credit for being so meticulous, if you will, right? Because that's the beauty of someone who has devoted their life to helping someone. So those guys are angels in your eyes, I'm sure, because they were doing God's work, right?
Yeah. And I went back and saw the surgeon after, when I got through some of the stuff, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you're married or not, but I'm bringing you flowers, and I just want to say thank you for saving my life. I'm bawling my eyes out. She's starting to cry, give each other a big hug. And she said, we never find out what the outcome is of these stories. We do the surgery, we never hear from the people again. And it was like, I was glad to do it. Yeah. That's either right before or right after surgery. I don't know. Somebody else might be able to say.
Pretty incredible. You know, the fact that how long, do you know how long the surgery was?
It was about 9 hours.
Incredible.
As you can tell, it's very meticulous surgery. This isn't fixing a broken leg, which those can be dangerous,
Right.
But one little mistake, one little thing that's out of whack, it's it. I'm done.
Totally. So tell me about this picture, if you don't mind.
Okay, that's as we're pushing our bikes up the mountain. That's
This
before.
before
That's about an hour or two before. That's my buddy Dave.
Mm.
That's about an hour or two before we got up. Yeah, I'd say we're probably an hour or two from the peak. So that was right before. Yep.
Right. So you have documentation, obviously, of that day, and there's your expensive helmet, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about also one other thing that a lot of people don't realize, that you had a support team, if you will, right? Who are these young ladies?
Those are my daughters. And now you're gonna make me cry.
They're the ones you cry, not me.
They live in Texas and they had to fly here. They had to fly to California. I had to transfer hospitals to Special Neurological Center down in LA because I was paralyzed. In this picture, I'm still paralyzed. My legs wouldn't work, and my daughters are there. And like, okay, hey dad, what's up? And then the neurosurgeons, there's a bunch of them. They're like, we don't know if you're going to be able to work, because when you have a spinal cord injury, you can't really tell if it's cut. Okay, it's pretty cut and dry, right? Pretty simple. If it's cut, where it's cut from below isn't going to work. Mine was just so damaged, but it wasn't cut. And they're like, we don't know. They said, it's just a waiting game. And so in that picture, I was still paralyzed. The very next day, I took my first steps. The very next day. And they weren't really, like, I had a walker, I had a team kind of holding me, it was a long battle, but I walked after 8 days.
Tell me about this picture. Is this before or after?
Oh, it's definitely after.
So you are definitely moving, right? So you started walking 8 days after. That's incredible.
Took 8 steps. I took 10 steps. 8 days after, I was like, I could walk. Of course, I'm bawling my eyes out. But my left arm didn't really work because that one cervical column that was pulled out, that took to hold all that pressure on the spinal cord, and that caused more damage. And so my left arm was just kind of like, I could kind of move the shoulder a little bit, the arm didn't work. So I had a lot of recovery on that. But I could walk, and I was like, oh God, this is really good. And then from there, I started trying to figure out, okay, we got the you're paralyzed part erased. Okay. Now it's kind of like, okay, you have to start and picture yourself as a toddler. Like I had trouble brushing my teeth. So when I went to brush my teeth, I couldn't really move. So I would brush my teeth like this. And there's excruciating pain, because any movement of any twitching, any force of any muscle, basically tears. Because I stopped the pain medicine in 5 days. I said, I went cold turkey.
Wow.
And so in that, I just laid in bed and suffered for 2 days and cried. That was my experience with suffering. And then
go ahead. No, you go.
And so at that point, as I play back all this, every activity in my life after, I realized I had taken about 4 to 5 process steps on how to do everything. Okay, I can't bathe alone. I needed help walking to the bathroom. In the hospital, they had to help me clean myself after I went to the bathroom. And so my body was pretty destroyed. And then when I get out of the hospital, they're like, okay, you can't, is the BLT, you can't bend, lift, or twist anything for 6 months. And you can't lift anything heavier than a gallon of milk. I'm like, well, I couldn't lift a 1 pound weight. It didn't matter. A gallon of milk was like, and he said, you can't fall. He said, if you fall and this breaks again, like you pulled off the biggest miracle there is. And these are doctors. You can't fall, but you have to start living.
Right.
So when you walk, it's in your head. There's trauma there of don't fall, the fear, but you still have to do it. It's kind of like, okay, jump across the rocks to the other side of the creek, but it's full of alligators. But you still kind of need to get across the creek.
You need to go. You need to go. So
And
therapy
that was
was
everything I went through.
Therapy was a big part for you?
It was massive. I did physical therapy for 14 months. And this is Megan, my physical therapist, Megan, and the studio where I went to was core conditioning. They specialize in neurological. She's a genius lady. And I told her my goals at the time. This is I think my third physical therapist. And she said, okay, let's make a plan. She goes, I don't know if it's possible, but we're surely going to go for it. And then she was key to getting my left arm working. It took 3 months to just lift my left arm up with no weights, just lift it. It took 3 months to do that. I still stay in contact with her. Send her a note and I thank her. Hey, I just paddleboarded today. And again, I thought about what you did for me and I want to thank you for what you did. I send her notes thanking her all the time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But you're also not just paddle boarding. You're still riding your bikes. Here's another cool. I like this picture, by the way. This is a cool picture of you. You're still getting on a bike. You're still moving out there. You're doing things. You are doing what you said. You're living. That's beautiful.
And that bike is actually not the bike I used to ride. It's a special bike. If you notice, it kind of has the lower, what we old school would call the girl's frame.
Right.
So I talked to my doctors and they're like, yes, be careful. Get one that you're sitting upright, not like the race bikes where you're down, like a road bike. And then if you have to ditch it, I can just kind of step through that thing and push it to the side if I am going to fall or something like that. You've shown a few pictures of the bike, and I want to share with everybody the steps I went through to actually ride a bike. Because these are the steps I went through for walking to running, to walking in a pool, to eventually swimming in a pool, even though I have a neck restriction, like when my head doesn't turn any further than this. So what I did was everything I checked with my doctors, I had to check everything. So I went and bought a 3-wheeled, big old basket in the back, granny bike. And I wore a helmet, and it looks dorky as heck. There it is.
I think you look dorky, yeah?
Yeah. Actually, I got a lot of compliments on that bike. People like, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the safest thing for me. So one of the things I learned through all these steps, and through any steps anybody wants to go through when they're trying to create a change in their life, right? Say you're overweight and you want to lose weight. Step number 1, be embarrassed. Feel uncomfortable. Feel like a dork, okay? Once you get past that, now you have the task at hand. So then I said, maybe one day I can ride a bike. So I bought this granny bike. And I tooled around town on the granny bike. And I live near the promenade, so literally it was kind of perfect environment for me to recover. Then from the granny bike, so okay, how can I explore the world a little bit more? The granny bike had 3 gears, and you can only go so far. It's a granny bike, right? Then I bought the recumbent bike. Talked to my doctors and said, hey, what about this? And they're like, yeah, we don't want you to get hit by a car. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stay in the bike path. They're like, okay, you good. So I started riding the recumbent bike, and I was building up a little bit of strength. I still had the thing where pressure on my neck, and my neck wasn't as strong, so I'd have to take breaks and basically get like this and kind of rest my neck, because your head's pretty heavy.
Right.
So I just continued. And then I went and talked to my doctors. It's like, hey, what do you think about a regular bike? And they're like, what kind? And I said, well, I'm not going on a road bike and I'm not going to be clipped in. So the bike I bought, it's a Townie Electra with a girl's frame. And I ended up riding that thing 56 miles and a half Ironman post-accident.
Wow.
And so if you think of the steps, I was like, I had to get the mental courage to actually get on a bike. I had to get the mental courage to ride a recumbent, which I've never ridden in my life. And then I had to get the real courage to get on the other bike. And I'll be honest, I really didn't have the courage. Dave called me up and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just hanging out. And he goes, I'm coming over, because he knows I'm struggling with this bike thing. I had the bike, but I didn't ride it. He goes, I'm coming over and we're going for a ride. And I was like, no, hold on. And so I'm trying to process the mental trauma and make all these excuses. He goes, shut up, I'm on my way. He shows up and I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. Because again, I fall, right? And this is how he did it. And it's with this guy. And he told me, he goes, don't fall because people are going to blame me for everything. Okay, 2 times you're with me, you get hurt. He goes, no, don't fall. So we went for a ride. Of course, I'm filled with tears, and you hear and you see the pictures of, say, like people that complete marathons, and you see people crying at the end, just that emotional release. UFC fighters, I follow UFC quite a bit. They finally win the championship, or so you see them they try to hold in because of machismo, but you see them crying, right? I had that happen with every single thing I've done, from walking to running to riding a bike to paddleboarding to lifting a 5-pound weight to throwing my first punch in martial arts to completing my first belt test. Every single one was those 4 steps, completing it, being proud and confident in myself, and then just continue on. And of course, the emotional thing of I did it. The emotional thing of I did it.
That's beautiful.
And
wow.
like the first time I showered by myself, I could not believe it. A tub is a really slippery thing. You can't fall. Walking through a locker room in the YMCA to walk in the pool. You know how slippery a locker room is? You know how slippery a pool deck is? I almost crawled on the deck to the stairs, holding on to that railing. So,
Rich, one of the things that some people always talk about success, right? And they always think it's financial, but firsthand how every step for you was a successful step to get to the next level. And people don't comprehend unless they've gone through something. I'm going to be honest with you. As a kid, I had polio. So my legs turned backwards. I wore braces. I lost the ability to walk. So I get where you're coming from, the struggles to learn. And I said it yesterday when I was talking to my friend Brigitte. I said, you may not know this about me, but after that happened to me, it looked like I got off a horse. I said, the only difference today is that my horse is a little thinner. That's it. So I'm not as bow-legged, right? So you've made tremendous strides, but you stopped being, in a way, you had to be selfish. You had no choice. You had to take care of you. But now you've made a total change, and you've made a change where you're there to help other people. Before we get into even how that started happening, I'd love to share a video of an event that we're having here, a virtual event. I'd love for you to be part of it. And then we're going to show another video later on the actual physical event where people can actually come take a look.
Are you ready for an unforgettable experience that will inspire and motivate you? Look no further than Heroes Rising. This virtual event will showcase some of the speakers who will grace our stage in July. Join us May 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Heroes Rising brings together a lineup of incredible speakers and thought leaders who will share their wisdom and insights on how to become the hero of your own story. With topics ranging from personal development and leadership to entrepreneurship and social impact, this event has something for everyone who wants to make a positive difference in the world. Whether you're an aspiring leader, an entrepreneur, or simply someone who wants to be inspired and motivated, Heroes Rising is the perfect opportunity to connect with like-minded individuals and learn from some of the most influential voices in the industry. Don't miss your chance to be a part of this transformative experience. Get your tickets now and join us for Heroes Rising on May 12th.
So when I listen to that coming event, I'm thinking, wait a minute, Rich is a hero. He's a hero because you're transforming other people's lives. You're making a difference. And earlier you told me about that you're a volunteer, right? You work with the fire department. Tell us even how that came about. And then I want to know about the story you told me earlier that happened yesterday with the fire department.
Okay. So my accident happened when I was 53. June, it'll make it 4 years. I've always wanted to kind of do something. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of on that bubble-ish of like starting to look at retirement. And I realized I had no retirement skills. I'm a computer guy. So nobody needs a computer guy. And plus, I don't want to do computer stuff anymore anyway, right? And so I said, I looked at the different programs where I could volunteer. And I thought, a volunteer EMT. I used to be a triathlete, pretty good runner, do marathons and all that. So they always need volunteers at these medical tents. And I've visited a lot of those medical tents because I've crushed my body racing. I said, okay, I'm going to sign up for this EMT program and I can volunteer in the community in Ventura, California. Signed up for the program through a local college. I know nothing about medicine. And this was a tough program. This was legit. I literally studied 7 days a week, 5 hours a day. I don't know if I was 55, I think it was 56 when we went through the program. All my classmates are 22 years old. Some of them were like, hey, let's go have a beer after class. And they're like, hey, I can't get in. I'm 19.
Right.
So I went through the whole thing. I completed the program. There's a national exam. I passed the national exam. And then when I realized I'm having trouble volunteering because of all the legalities in the U.S., I said, I'm going to go volunteer in the emergency room. I didn't realize I had to do clinicals. So I rode in the ambulance. I worked in the emergency room. And there's EMTs in the emergency room, almost all of them. And so like the doctor stitches you up, but then you need it bandaged, right? Or you need the splint put in. So they're in there. So I'm going to volunteer at the hospital. So I contact the hospital, like, well, you can't volunteer. You got to be an employee. You can't volunteer in the back of the ambulance. You got to be an employee because, you got to go all those training, all the liability insurance, all this stuff like that. And then as I'm going through this, I decided, I kind of want to settle my brain a little bit with what I feel is overstimulation with the media in the U.S. I moved to Mexico through a friend. He's got a place down here. He goes, hey, rent next door. So I come down to Mexico. I don't speak any Spanish. This was actually a year ago this month. Came down to visit to see if I would like the place. Went to the local fire department. My friend speaks Spanish, so he translated. I talked to the fire chief. I said, I want to volunteer. I got a newly inked license. I have very little experience, but I want to help out. He said, you learn Spanish, you can help out. September, I moved down here, went back. Of course, they're like, oh, this guy really did show up, right? And so we started talking. And I spoke a little bit, I could say some words in Spanish and then Google Translate. So they said, okay, you're on the team. So I had to submit to them a bunch of paperwork and they vetted me to make sure like I was legit. Okay. And so from there, I began one of the projects they gave me. They said, we want the bomberos, the firemen and the paramedics to learn English because during the summer, during the winter, there's a lot of Canadian tourists here and they don't really learn Spanish, so there's a gap in the communications. So I've been teaching those guys English, like medical assessments. Like they know all the medical procedures, they just don't know the words, right? So they can introduce themselves. It's not, hey, where's the pain? It's where pain. Like we're 2-year-old English. And so, but if there's a 911 call in the ambulance, I jump in the back. I go with those guys. And one day the fire trucks were rolling out. They're like, hey, there's a fire. You want to go? I'm like, okay. And I just jumped back in the fire truck, right? And so yesterday, the last 2 days were focused on head, neck, and back injuries.
Mm.
And so we did like probably 10 scenarios yesterday at the fire department, to where I was in the front seat of a vehicle pretending I got in a crash. And they would come up and say, don't move, don't move, don't turn your head. They're screaming at me in English. And we're kind of evaluating them to where they hold my head. They're like, don't move. We're here to help you. We are firemen. We're paramedics. They just keep repeating. I'm just having to keep repeating it to calm me down. And I'm screaming. I'm acting like, what happened? And I'm talking a lot. And they're like, don't move. Speak slowly. So they throw the neck collar on me, get the backboard, take me out of the van I was in, carry me on the backboard to the ambulance. We did it like 10 times. And they're like, Rich, how is this for you? I'm like, well, 3 years ago, this was a no-go. Too much trauma in here. But now I was like, hey, if I told those guys, I go, if you guys can understand 2 additional words as we learn that makes a difference from somebody turning their head, or you don't tell them properly and it cuts their spinal cord, and we're good.
Yeah,
we're good.
It's life and death, right?
And it's a blast. For me, it's a blast. Really good guys, and we clown around sometimes, but we run through scenarios, and they're learning a lot. So there's that, and then I'm just kind of enjoying it. I really enjoy it.
Wow. So you decided to help, to volunteer, to make a difference in the world. Why did you feel you needed to do that? You didn't have to.
It started with the podcast early on when I was going through my recovery. I mean, you have 14 months of physical therapy. Can't do a lot of super active stuff. I mean, you have a lot of think time to process the trauma. I read the trauma books, how to survive near death mentally, because I should essentially be dead. And so I started writing the podcast, and then that became very therapeutic for me. I didn't know it would be. And so a friend of mine said, hey, you're going to write 3 versions of this. You're going to write a version for you, a version for friends and family, and a version for others. So you're just going to pare it down, because what's important to you isn't really a message. So I read all the books on how to actually tell a story properly. So it's not about, hey, look at me, because I was pretty worried about that, right? So a friend of mine, and I've had some interviews, some newspaper things that happened, and like I'm kind of like, nah, it's all good. And they're like, look, it's a good story, and it's not a story unless you're in it. So tough cookies, you're going to deal with it. So I started writing the podcast because I talk about this on one of them. I really feel in my heart, if I don't take my good fortune and share it, the lessons or my lessons, right, from my experience that might help one person, I'd be the biggest dummy on the planet and the most selfish person. Because show any doctor my neck and tell them it wasn't regular surgery, tell them it was an impact crash, all of them will say he's dead or quadriplegic. I guarantee. And so, given how did I survive to the level I did? I have no idea. I'm not going to take any chances and brush that off. So I have to help others. So the second podcast I wrote, a friend of mine, I had him read the draft. Chris, very close friend. Chris calls me up. He goes, I just read it. And I was like, what's going on? He goes, you're a jerk. I'm like, okay, I don't disagree. And I go, what's going on? He goes, I just read your podcast. I just got through crying, and I called my mom and told her I loved her for the first time in 12 years.
Wow.
I said, okay, Chris, in each of those podcasts, I put about 100 hours worth of effort into. These aren't just blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, that was worth 100 hours. And so I have subsequently gotten more feedback from people. And I talked to a couple other people that have broken their necks and survived. And I went and talked to them. And similar situations, just life was good. Next thing you know, boom. I said, don't waste the gift. So for me, it's kind of like, say you have low economic means, but you win the lottery of like $100 million and you keep it for yourself. No way, man.
It's a waste.
No way. You gotta share. You gotta share. And so I can give people my time. I can give them what worked for me, might not work for them. And it does feel good in my heart. Like I told the guy yesterday, one of the paramedics, he's like, thanks for doing this. And I said, look, I've worked my whole life doing tech, and there's never been any real feel good in doing technology work for me. I said, just doing this with you guys today is very close to my heart, and it feels really good. So yeah, I do get something out of it. I definitely get something out of it.
Without a doubt.
And so, like, and I was talking to one of them the other day, kind of a younger guy, and he's on that cusp of like, yeah, I'm still kind of going through life, but I haven't really pushed it up. And that's when I kind of go to like the four things when it comes to the bike riding, the swimming, the paddleball, like all the activities done. I climbed Half Dome with a full pack with my buddy Dave. This post-accident. So I said, okay, be embarrassed. Just be embarrassed. Okay. It's okay. We're adults now. Okay. Leave the machismo out the door. Visualize what you want. You got to think, okay, what will it be like? And then go beyond what you think you can do. Set some goals and then make little wins. For me, I walked steps. I walked 10 steps. I ended up pushing the walker with my neck brace on 8 miles one day.
Wow. Determined.
So I just wanted it. So as I tell people in one of my videos, I'm like, okay, if I can, and it was a painful 8 miles. I'm not taking any pain medicine. So I'm walking, my joints are locking up, the muscles are screaming, and I'm stopping, I'm crying, I'm breathing, and I continue. And so if I can push a walker 8 miles wearing a neck brace with the fear of a fall, I'm probably going to die. I kind of sort of challenge people. All right, there's some people have physical limits, right? But large populace, give me your reason why you cannot go outside and walk 300 yards. I would love to hear your reason.
The excuses.
I would love to hear your reason, right? So when you have one, that's good. Okay, good for you. Let's find another way you can get whatever you want, because there's other ways. I had to be super creative with every single thing I did. Like with the bike example. Okay, can't ride a regular bike, but what can I do to get out and see the world, right? I couldn't run at first, but I walked a half marathon 4.5 hours after 4.5 months after my accident. And my body still was atrophied, like my whole, I was Robotville, right? And so I went through those steps as I went back. Like the first time I paddleboarded, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I had to have somebody carry the paddleboard down. I couldn't even lift it, 10 pounds. And then I kind of had to push out in the ocean. It's like, okay, what happens if my neck seizes up and I'm out here? I still had to do it. I used to surf a lot. I used to surf some bigger waves, so I'm comfortable in the ocean. I was super comfortable in the ocean. 15-foot wave, let's go. I could hold my breath 4 minutes not underwater, static. I could hold my breath 4 minutes to train for the bigger waves. Now I'm terrified paddling, just walking in to get past a 2-foot wave. But you just did it, and I was embarrassed. I was like, oh, this is weird. Then somebody had to carry the paddleboard up from the beach for me. But it's okay. So
it's okay to be embarrassed. Right.
Yeah, you have to be embarrassed. I think you have to be embarrassed. The first time I went to Krav class with Robert, it's like, hey man, I don't know how to do anything, but I want to learn how to fall, because a fall to me could be more detrimental to a fall than you. So
Right.
I went to Krav martial. I didn't know what Krav Maga was. I had no clue. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to Krav Maga, and he's like, dude, what are you nuts? That's like some serious violent stuff. I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm going how to learn how to fall, and I'm going to learn how to protect the neck. So I talked to Robert, showed him my X-ray. He was afraid. He's like, oh my gosh, we got to be like real careful with this. So I went from that. I was doing privates, slow by slow by slow. I went through the steps. I didn't visualize the life I wanted. I only visualized a fall and somebody coming up my neck. He visualized what I could do. Robert did. Then we went past okay. We set some goals. He goes, I think after 3 months, he said, we have testing coming up in a month. I think you can do it. I talked to Mr. Cox, and we can do a private test, because I can't test with another student that they make a mistake and then they, torque my neck.
Of course.
So we had to do it in an expert level environment. And then so I celebrate all these little things I learned in the curriculum for the Krav, and then I did it. So I drove back with Robert. I thanked him. I have tears in my eyes. It's the same process. Then he goes, you should come to regular class now. I was like, man, I don't know. So as I'm driving to class, I'm terrified. I almost turned around. But I kept going. He introduced me to everybody. He said, Rich has some metal in his neck, so we're going to be careful of that. And he goes, anything I don't think it's safe for him to do, I'm going to call up. And so, but I show up wearing the yellow belt. People are like, we've never seen you before, have you? I'm like, well, I've been hiding in private lessons with Robert, right? And then I trained with these guys. I quit the privates and just went to regular class as a regular person, met some great people, the higher ranks, awesome school, Way of Orient, Inventor, awesome school. The higher ranks would grab us and teach us stuff. And everybody knew my limits. They're like, hey, we're going to do this. Okay, but and I would just watch. I couldn't do some of it. Like,
of course.
Headlocks on me, right? And so that was it. But it was the same process. Be embarrassed and start visualizing stuff. And don't plow through it. No. It's undulating up to where you're going to get. It's not a plow through it.
Yeah.
In my
today I did a show earlier on meditation and devotion. And one of the lines that came from it was, make the crooked straight, right?
Yeah.
And basically, your goals are a straight line, but there are going to be peaks and valleys and so forth.
Yes.
But you still have to have that devotion to go forward. So I appreciate your devotion. Thank you so much for taking the time today to be here and inspire. And you said, I've gone through all this and I kept going. And what's your excuse, right? People who are sitting sedentary lifestyle, what's your excuse? They have zero excuses. Meanwhile, you could have made 1,000 excuses and everybody would have said, okay, but you didn't, because
I had every excuse in the world.
Oh, you could have. And you know what? Everybody would have said, we get it, but you didn't. And you did not allow anyone to even stop you. If anything, you had the right people in your life who encouraged you to go further, right? So
yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for inspiring my audience and anybody listening. And if we have new audience, thank you so much. Follow the show, follow Rich. He is definitely somebody that you want to follow because, my friend, you're truly inspirational. And I know that you're doing great things. You're teaching other firefighters how to help someone in those particular times when people are at their lowest, right? When they're injured, they have no idea of what's going on, and you're helping them to help someone. Man, you're doing amazing work. You are a true hero.
If I can plug my stuff, so if people do want to follow,
What's
the website?
Let's put your website up, and let me put it on the screen, and we'll share it. Okay. Right. So
it's richhasfun.com.
Say that again.
richhasfun.com.
How easy is that? Rich
And
has
then the Instagram is the same. Rich has fun. So richhas.com.
is it
and Rich
uh,
has fun.
RICHH, two
Yep.
H's?
Yep.
Okay.
richhasfun.com.
I'm putting it up. Let me know if that is the correct one. Yeah. And that's it right there.
Yes. And just so everybody knows, like, I will never collect a dime for my material. It's business for people. I understand it, and I applaud that. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And this one here, I feel like I'd be stealing from my karma, and nah, I was just giving too much June 1st. I don't want to steal from my good luck.
Not at all. Not at all. Rich, like I said, you are a hero. I think I have to play this other video because this talks about heroes. Let's take a look.
Heroes Rising Apex is the highly anticipated business event of the year. This gathering of industry leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, and visionaries promises to be a game-changing experience that will inspire, educate, and provide networking opportunities. Get ready to immerse yourself in a world of innovation, strategy, and collaboration as we embark on an unforgettable journey of learning, growth, and success. Join us in New York on July 14th through the 16th. Go to heroesrisingapex.com for tickets.
It's for sure an event that, someone like yourself, I think you should come and join us because you are definitely a hero. You don't ask for anything. You are there just to help someone. Not many people like you. There are not a lot of people like you. To me, my friend, you are a true hero. You're volunteering, you're helping people, you're not asking for anything in return. Now, we all know in the world of coaching that there's a lot of coaches who they have zero value and then they want to get paid for it. You have so much value and you're not asking for anything. Why are you, and you said you don't want to hurt your karma, and I agree with you on that respect. I'm a giver myself, so I'm always giving, trying to help people. At the end of the day, what's one word of advice that you can tell someone who puts themselves last and doesn't take care of themselves? Like, you definitely take care of yourself. You're physically fit. You're doing things. You're constantly moving because you know that you've given this gift back that you lost temporarily, right?
If somebody's, like, if you're saying basically somebody overcommits and neglects himself, you have to be careful. You have to be careful with that. So if somebody is just kind of giving so much to others, I would say kind of, okay, give to yourself.
First, I believe.
Give to yourself. Sometimes it might be second. There are days where I don't really feel like driving down the fire department. It's really close. I'm tired. I don't really feel like going through all these words again. It's tiring mentally. I was like, all right, take 30 minutes, give them a call, get on there. Okay, it's good. So I took care of myself for 30 minutes, took a little break. Okay, all right, get on there. And then when I leave, it feels awesome.
It does. Because, you're doing incredible work when I said take care of yourself first, I always believe that 100%, because for me to help anyone else, if I show up not the perfect well, there's no one perfect, but the perfect person I need to be, how can I give you anything? I don't want to give you 10% of me. I want to give you 100% of me. But that's why I say take care of me first, so that I can give you 100, right? And I think that's what you talk about. Take out that 30 minutes and then still go, and then you feel amazing, right?
And during my recovery, I had to be selfish. All I could do is ask people for help for me to do what I needed to do. Like, can you carry my bike down the stairs? Because I can't carry the bike. Can you, one guy's like, hey, you're going to the grocery store. Can you buy me muscle milk? So they come in the 4-packs.
Right.
I couldn't even open the 4-packs. I had to flip it upside down and do it, right? I couldn't, this left arm didn't work. I'm like, hey, can you unscrew a bunch of the caps for me?
Mm.
So I had to be selfish to get here. But it doesn't mean you're selfish and you're a jerk.
Right. Don't be a jerk. I agree.
Yeah. But I would say to anybody going through their journey, whatever they're starting on, don't be cool. Don't be, he's got it all going on or she's got it all going on. Really self-reflect. Like, to me, machismo is like, okay, we're all badasses. I'm not a badass, right? Like, oh, okay, what are you really trying to say? Like, look, you can get stuff done. That's it, you know, but you got to do a little bit of self-inventory and be honest. Why am I doing it? And if I did this stuff to get something, in my view, I'm a dummy. I'm a dummy sometimes, but not on this one.
Yeah, I got you. Rich, thank you for being here, for taking the time, for sharing your story, and for inspiring all of us to be better every single day. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, and everybody have a great day.
Yes, enjoy. Make it exceptional, everybody.